event for the B2B Technology Group. We're going to be talking today about one of our most popular topics, advanced lead scoring techniques. So not just the basics, going into advanced techniques in terms of using negative attributes, setting up workflows to automatically change people's life cycle stages, even how to save you some money here. I'm Jen. I'm the owner of Kiwi Creative. Emma here. Oh, there I am. So we're a HubSpot Platinum partner for B2B tech companies specifically, which is why we lead this hug. We meet on the second Tuesday every 3 months. So once a quarter, we have a fun presenter here talk about a topic that's very relevant to that audience. And today it is Miss Emma. She is our HubSpot Director here at Kiwi. I will let her introduce herself, then she'll go through some slides and do screen sharing.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for being here. This is super exciting. And I see some of my friends here in the chat, and they'll be the first to tell you how excited I get about talking about HubSpot. So this is excellent that I get to share a lot of this with all of you worldwide. I am the HubSpot Director. That's all I do is push buttons and break stuff in HubSpot. The good news is that means I learn a lot along the way. And then share it with you so you don't have to break the same things, right? I push all the buttons. I got all the certifications. I know a lot of you spend a ton of time in the academy as well, so I'm sure you're familiar. But something I'm very proud about that I tell everybody, whether they like it or not, is Kiwi is a 3 times accredited partner. So that's something we worked really hard on, and it really speaks to, although we don't sell a ton of HubSpot because that's not our goal, we manage it really well and we really take care of our people and can kind of hang with the big boys, with the best of them. So today specifically, we're going to talk about lead scoring. My goal for you today is that you actually leave with a very real thing that you can then implement in your own portal, right? So I don't want to be very abstract. We're really going to get to some nuts and bolts today. Per a couple of questions already, we are recording this. You're stuck listening to me again in the future if you'd like. Please do ask your questions. This is meant to be very informative. Again, not a very hypothetical presentation. I want you to actually be able to do this, right? And one thing I do want to clarify before we start having any fun, what we're talking about today is the HubSpot score property. This one requires setup. I'm sure you all know, but just so we cover our bases, this is not the predictive lead score feature that is included in the enterprise tier. So we're talking about HubSpot score property, and that is available in the Pro and Enterprise Hub tier of all the hubs. So if that's what you're here for, good, you're in the right place. So first things first, everybody here, well, most of you here probably already use HubSpot. Are you already using scoring? Is it working? Is it the best ever? Are you struggling? Are there areas that we can really make sure we hit on today to make sure you get the most out of your HubSpot life, right? Let's see. I'm looking. Haven't used it. Okay. Demo request. Perfect. Okay. Somewhat struggling. That's okay. Okay, looks like we got quite a mix of folks using it, some loving it, some hating it. Others haven't gotten to it yet. So, let's get into it, shall we? So specifically what we're talking about today, and for those of you that haven't used it yet, this is going to blow your mind. It's just a field, right? So field, property, those words are used interchangeably in HubSpot. It literally is a contact property. Some folks hear scoring and they think it's some algorithm with, connections and having to do all this work. It's not. It's an out-of-the-box calculation field. It is on your contact object, right? We can do it elsewhere. Spoiler alert, we'll get to that. And the value of this field and the hard part is determining, before you start setting it up, what behaviors or characteristics add or subtract points, right? So that's the hard part, and we're going to go through it. So why on earth would we use a scoring property, right? Other than we heard it was cool. The punchline is scoring monitors those slow burn contacts. So some contacts, if they fill out the please take my money form, well, we're going to call them right away. Other contacts maybe met at a trade show and got them imported. Perhaps it's not appropriate for your team to call them right away. Perhaps we'd rather monitor what they're really interested in, what they're engaging with. Do they match your ideal customer profile, right? So this helps remove some of that manual process of your team calling every single person you met at the trade show. Good luck, right? It allows you to avoid reaching out at a bad time by setting those predetermined attributes. We'll be able to see, hey, they're looking at all these web pages and downloaded this content. Now's our time to strike. It also, and a lot of people kind of forget this part, it also helps disqualify maybe bad leads, right? So, of course, we want to convert as many as we can to be good leads, but sometimes it's just as valuable to get some people out of that pool, right? Note that is very important when we're talking about score. Once we publish that score, it scores. There's no workflow that says, yes, now go ahead and score. The second we push save, that score becomes published. What that can mean, that I encourage you to consider before we start knocking over dominoes and pushing buttons, is that it will affect potentially your workflows, your lists, your lifecycle stages. All of those things are indeed connected to score, right? If you have it set up that way. If you're starting from scratch, this is just something that you don't have to worry about breaking, but will very much benefit you if you remain cognizant of these connections. So things like a certain number of points can progress lifecycle stage. That can be that relationship. A certain number of negative points can indicate to you that this person should not be a marketing contact, for example, right? Another thing, of course, is that sync, specifically with Salesforce and Dynamics. Oftentimes, folks sync that relationship, so send those contacts from HubSpot over to Salesforce or Dynamics based on lifecycle stage, which if the score is affecting it, you could, if you're not being careful, send a bunch of people over. So this white paper is one that Jen will pop in the chat for me. But this is also something that just if you're thinking about connecting those systems, here's a bit of a guide to help you do that without breaking all the things that I've broken in my life, right? When we're talking about lead scoring, the way Kiwi likes to break it down, and we do a lot of onboardings and implementations, and the way we found it to be most helpful to our clients is thinking about it in 3 buckets, which IceCube is helping us visualize here. Firmographic, so that can mean all that demographic information, either of the contact or the company, and that helps us identify that ideal customer, right? Our behavioral information, which can indicate, again, that interest in sales readiness or disinterest, not being sales ready, right? We don't want to think in terms of good and bad. Both of those things can be important data. And then lastly, which is very important that a lot of folks skip, are those negative attributes. So what are those characteristics or behaviors that we do not want that person to progress? We don't want to give them points and have our team spending all day on the phone. So a great place to start when kind of determining what these characteristics will be is talking with your team. So specifically, your sales team, your account management team, your service team, those are folks talking constantly with your existing opportunities and your existing customers. And of course, your past customers, your lost opportunities, right? We're not scared of bad data. We like bad data because then we can fold it into our entire holistic strategy. So if we're talking with our teams to say, hey, what are the job titles that typically convert? What is the form that most people fill out before we pick up the phone? What are these characteristics that we can generalize and share across the board so we can best understand how to set up these attributes?
Hey, Emma, we had one quick question from Bias in the chat. He wants to know, would you build firmographic and behavioral and different properties and then create a calculated property, combine them, or just build everything in one scoring property?
I find having them in a singular property as separate attributes, which we will build together, so we'll have a visual to match it up, is best. Reason being, and you're skipping ahead, you guys are just like way ahead of me. Lead scoring is not written in stone. So we may find in a couple slides that perhaps our lead scoring was too ambitious or maybe not ambitious enough, and we will want to go back and edit it. So for our own sanity, being able to edit those things quickly and easily, your future self will thank you. Anything else, Jen, before we move on?
That was the only question so far in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Don't be shy, okay? Okay. Scroll, please. There we go. So we talked about how we're going to consider where we start. And now we start really getting into what buttons are we going to push. But before we get to the fun stuff, and see, I told you guys, we're skipping ahead a little bit. Before we get to the fun stuff of actually opening up HubSpot and pushing buttons, I find it very helpful to write it all down, right? So one of the things that Jen is going to share with you all, in addition to my fancy white paper, is this document of a lead scoring matrix. Now, a lot of this, the folks already using HubSpot, you're going to be pretty familiar with this first couple pages. I linked a video if you're really missing me and you want to watch some more, but this is meant to be a little bit more informational. If we keep cruising on down, you'll notice we have a sample lead scoring matrix. Now, the benefit of having this documentation, right? We always say documentation. Documentation is good, right? Number one, if a new person joins your team, if a partner agency is coming in to help, if you suddenly have to smoosh HubSpot with Salesforce and you didn't previously, if you know you want to make some changes, here's a good place to start versus trying to unravel that ball of yarn that can be HubSpot, right? Additionally, as you're working with your team to determine these various attributes, because sales may have a very different perspective than customer service, of course, it's helpful to have everyone put their thoughts in one spot because we know how that can go, right? Chasing down email and Slack threads. This is an example of kind of how Kiwi thinks about this. You'll notice that firmographic data, so those regular old properties, right? Job title, location, annual revenue, industry, number of employees, favorite sports team, dog's name, whatever. We then have that second category we talked about, right? Behavioral. So that typically falls into the categories of form submissions, web activity with your landing pages or your existing website, email activity. And we usually look at marketing, of course, because if someone's sending them sales emails, that typically means they've progressed enough already. And then, of course, we look at ads. If you're running LinkedIn, Facebook, or Google ads. And then we can't forget that important part, negative attributes. What are those folks that we don't want to progress? We don't maybe want to send the premium content. We don't want our team to engage with quite yet, right? Then we can, of course, kind of take those points as we're thinking through them and tie them to those life cycle stages. Remember, we mentioned earlier about the connection of these things, how we want to be thoughtful, right? So that's an example. Take it or leave it. If we continue cruising down, I kind of built this dummy one for our example today. So I decided in my made-up world that I want to target any job title that contains marketing or CMO. I am going to look just in Michigan, Ohio, right? Shout out Michigan and Ohio. Okay. I'm being a little, I'm not including everyone today. I want to look at, in my example, just the folks that have the industry within technology. And I want to look at a company revenue of $100,000 or more. This is just examples, right? We're making it up as we go. You'll notice that behavioral information, specific form submissions, specific page views, marketing email clicks. I also want to highlight, and we'll get to this a little bit later too, you'll notice my fancy little gold star emoji. Something important to remember when you're building your lead scoring is that's great to monitor slow burn, right? It's my crock pot analogy. You put everything in the Dutch oven in the morning, put it on low, you come home at night, dinner's cooked and your house smells great. That's great for scoring. But some folks, we want them to skip to the front of the line. If someone books a meeting, I'm not going to wait until they hit a certain number of points in order to pass them to the appropriate user at our team, right? Of course, I have my negative examples, my negative attributes. As a partner agency, we get a lot of emails from HubSpot. I don't want to score them. I don't want to call them, right? They know about HubSpot. They don't need to talk to me. Folks that visit my careers page, folks that have a job title of intern, industries that I picked on the fly that don't match our service offering, right? So this can look however it's appropriate for you. So what we're going to do now, here's the fun part, right?
One quick question here. Oh, two. Josh would like to know, do you look at time frames for some of these activities?
We totally can. Thank you for bringing that up. Let's show this in the example, okay?
David also is kind of piggybacking off of that and wants to know, how do you handle scoring based on when the action occurs? For example, if the website was 3 months ago, it should not have the same value as today.
Totally. Let's start building it, and I can show you right now. I log into my lovely demo portal. So I'm going to apologize now because it's a demo. So the data's weird, but yours will look great. If I visit my settings cog in the top right-hand corner next to my beautifully AI-generated headshot, in my left-hand column, I'm going to cruise down under my data management section and pick properties. Because remember, this is not a secret algorithm. It's a property. And when I grab my properties, I do want to remain under contact properties. And I just search for score. It's going to blow your guys' mind. This is how easy it is. You're going to be masters at this. You'll notice here, I now have a calculation where I can add positive as well as negative criteria. So this is why we do that lovely matrix beforehand. Now I can simply cruise along, right? So I'm going to move that over here, cover my face so I can build this. So first things first, I know I'm looking for job title, and I'm going to get to that date question in just a second. But as I'm putting in this firmographic data, obviously that's not dated. So first things first, I want to update my score. I click my little pencil and I can indicate whatever number I see fit. Now, please note, there is not a magic number where every single portal, if you get 25 points, you're an SQL, you win. It could look very different for every single company. And I encourage you to experiment with it and check it out. The only requirement I really find necessary is being in line. If something gets 3 points for an email open, I wouldn't say that a web page view gets 100 points. That will obviously really skew your results, right? So I want to look at, knowing I'm doing my firmographic data first, I just want to look at my various properties. I can click contact or company. If I'm looking for job title, that'll be a contact property. And similarly to building lists or triggering workflows, I can specify equal to a very specific value, contains a certain value, right? So I can say is equal to, because I know these answers because I did all this work yesterday to make it work. I know that I put 2 job titles in here, marketing and CMO, right? I have to apply this filter. Don't make the mistake of hitting save without applying a filter, or you'll have to go back. Again, I learned the hard way. I can add some additional criteria. Same thing. I want to update my score. And if you guys are feeling froggy, please go into your own portal and click along, right? Obviously, it'll look a little different, but I can say state is going to be equal to some of my hometown values here. Apply filter. Can't forget that. And I just, of course, made them all 10s. This might be very different for you all, right? In my industry, I knew I wanted to pick some tech. Okay. Let's check out a few behavioral criteria, considering how we can refine by date. Additionally, some characteristics you can refine by number of times, right? So per those questions we just had. Making up my numbers. Okay. If I want to give points to a form submission, that's pretty easy. I'll check that radio button and I can say, oh yes, request a demo. Here's where we can refine a couple different ways. We can refine by what page it was submitted on. Obviously, this is a demo portal, so you see a lot of tests. Now, the request a demo form might be on a home page, a landing page, a solutions page, a services offered page. You can assign different points based on the page. You can also refine by date. So I can say someone that has filled out the request a demo form less than 30 days ago, less than 90 days ago. So that's exactly how you would fix that problem for the question we just had, right? I can't do that because this is a demo portal and no one's filled out forms. But in yours, they will. Additionally, we can say, again, for certain attributes, if this is a download a content form, maybe we want to see folks that downloaded 2 pieces of content. So we can specify how many times have they downloaded this content via the form, right? We can say they've done it at least twice. So we can adjust our points. It's not just a blanket, you get a point, you get a point, you get a point. We can be critical about who gets it when. Another very cool one that I want to make sure I show you guys is we can also give points to meetings booked using HubSpot meeting links, which everybody knows I love, right? So if I again visit form submissions, this time it can be meeting link. Now, this can also be your gold star behavior, right? We talked about these folks go to the front of the line. They don't need to gather a certain number of points just to talk to me. If they're taking the time to book a meeting, they get to talk to me, right? Lucky them. So we have a few positive traits, right? Let's take a peek, and we should not forget, right? We want to go ahead and add some negative. People, negative. Negative can be good. It disqualifies and deprioritizes either bad fit contacts or perhaps folks that just aren't ready yet. So I would add these negative attributes just like I did my positives. Add criteria. I'd pay attention to my points. And of course, you have to push a zillion buttons. But in this case, I can say, contact properties in my example for my matrix was email domain equals HubSpot.com, right? Taking away points based on email domain is ideal for partners, employees, obviously, competitors, vendors, folks that you don't want accidentally pushed to Salesforce or pushed to the top of the task queue for your sales team. I also want to take away points for job title, same thing, right? And I have to put that because that's my example. So we'll just leave it at this, right? So I have a couple positive attributes, a couple negative. This is not written in stone, but when I push save, all my contacts will now be updated accordingly. This is why we wanted to think beforehand. Was someone going to start getting emails as soon as they hit 10 points? They'd be flooded right now, right? If I head over to my contacts, let's take a peek at how this looks now because it's relatively immediate. Of my fake contacts, these lovely folks, you'll notice some are already customers because they have fake deals associated, right? Some are still leads. Let's see if we have our points cooking yet. Because what we want to pay attention to, the slowness. While we're waiting, let's think about, we completed our worksheet.
Emma, as a heads up, about 9,000 questions came in from the chat. If you'd like to.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go on order.
Perfect timing while we're waiting on HubSpot.
Yes, Vincent asked a question, but I think Jonah answered it. So Vincent, if that did not answer your question, let me know and I will get you back in the queue here. Jolene, is there any logic behind the numbers used for scoring 1 versus 10 or 2 for a value? I think you addressed that a little already.
Yep, it's totally up to you, but make them all relative. If you give somebody 50 points and another person 2, that'll skew your results.
All right. Our friend Katie here wants to know, I think this is when you were showing points for page views. Can they be external pages or does it have to be a HubSpot hosted page?
Yes, so that would look a tiny bit different. I'm going to head back to properties because that's where we're hiding it, right? Because we're very sneaky. So for page views, and again, this can be positive or negative. Let's pretend it's a negative one right now. I can add criteria, and you'll notice you have several radio buttons, right? I want to select page views for this one, and I can say has viewed a URL equal to, so a very specific one, or I can say, and this can be internal, external, or I could say has viewed, has viewed at least one URL containing careers or containing application, right? So this is how you can kind of blanket grab them. A use case I've seen on the positive attribute side is folks that host their blog on like WordPress or externally. They make sure to include website/blog/post title. So they know proactively they use that word blog. And so they're able to say page view contains blog, hooray, give them points.
All right, Pink sounds like she's ready to just get rid of their entire lead scoring model. What's the best way to implement this? Because it's triggering workflows, and she's afraid of how it's going to affect all of their contacts and workflows.
I'm glad you're thinking of that. Something you'll notice, and this is identical to all fields. Don't be afraid of this far right-hand column, used in, right? That's where we want to see, number one, how many contacts, companies, deals, whatever the case may be, has a value, but also where is this connected? And it's not a sexy process. You literally have to unravel. You have to go to the report and remove lead score. You have to go to the workflow and remove it or delete these assets. Until you do that, you're not able to, until you do that, every time you update this field, it will update those other assets. Bummer.
All right. Catherine would like to know, do you score a contact each time they land on a page? How does the model work with that?
That's totally up to you. Some pages, it makes more sense. If they visit your services or your pricing page a lot, wow, right? Bug eyes. If they visit your resources page a few times, that could indicate interest. But again, this is such a tricky exercise because it will be very different for every business. But that's what's nice is we can just push buttons. And as long as it's not sending emails to people, we can always change it.
All right. Chris would like to know if you have any examples of good negative scoring criteria for a SaaS company, specifically a product-led growth SaaS company. I'll go ahead and throw one out there. If you're offering free trials with no restriction to who gets them, a lot of people will give severe negative points to like .edu email addresses, .gov email addresses. It really depends what industries you're selling into. We had a client who some professor had their students download their software every semester, the free trial, and they would just get inundated with those sorts of emails. So that was definitely one that they used.
Additionally, I always find careers, great, they want to work for you. You're not selling into them. Competitors, obviously. And then, of course, job title can also be an indication. Perhaps persona as well, which kind of is tied to job title. If someone is a buyer Betty, for example, accounts payable, finance, something like that, that might not be the person that your team would be reaching out to. But the IT director, that's a bit more your speed.
And then the last one so far is Daria. Oh, she wants to get tricky. She wants to give negative points if they visit a competitor's website.
Unfortunately, we can't do that. I wouldn't be in my house right now. If I could figure out how to do that, this would be a very different conversation. I would own HubSpot. Unfortunately, we can't do that because the magic cookies and IP addressing, and now we're getting out of my technical wheelhouse, right? Can't see what other sites a prospect or a customer might visit.
All right. One more just came in. Karen, would you recommend separating between the behavior and fit score? But then she says demographic, I mean.
I like doing it I do like doing that for my own organizational purposes. I then find that in a quarter, 2 quarters a year, when I'm evaluating and saying, am I spot on or am I off? I'm able to find them a little easier. If I keep all my firmographics at the top, I can kind of make changes because I've seen some of these lists. I mean, this slider bar is pretty big. I've seen some where it's tiny because people have tens of dozens of attributes. So just for your own sanity, it might be a little bit easier to find if you kind of keep them in chunks.
All right. I think I missed one from up top. I just thought of it when I saw that. Alejandra, it's less of a question, more of a complaint, I guess. And I will agree. We have everything under one scoring property, but it's very difficult to visualize specific actions a contact took to score up and down. We only see the numbers change.
I agree with you 1,000%. And when you hover over the score property and click details, it simply says, yeah, workflow did it. And you're like, did what? That's where we can get thoughtful about some things, about any of these gold star behaviors. Now, that's just phrase I made up. But if there are forms that are pushing them straight to the front of the line, if there are characteristics within their ideal customer persona that you can identify, job title, geography, industry, that pushes them to the front of the line, that at least makes sure that your really qualified folks aren't languishing, waiting for points necessarily.
All right, scrolling back up, Hudson would like to know just general best practices if you tend to weigh firmographic information higher than marketing activity.
Best practices, my best practice forever and ever is continue to evaluate. Regardless of how big or small your team is, the boots on the ground will have invaluable information regarding how well is this working. They'll have that anecdotal things that can't be captured in a report. Wow, these leads are great and are really aware of our brand and really informed and educated versus this guy was a competitor and wanted to sell me something. And obviously that's two ends of the spectrum, but we will build some reports to kind of help us with that. But evaluating kind of regularly and really talking with your team can really make this a beneficial exercise for everyone.
Yeah, and I might be spoiling something coming up in the presentation, but one thing that Emma likes to do is look at the lead scores for closed lost deals versus closed won deals specifically. And if they're all over the board, then your lead scoring needs a little bit of revision. If they're pretty consistent and all the high scores are converting to customers, then you're definitely on the right path.
You are skipping ahead, but that's okay.
All right, Pink wants to know if it's a good practice to have more than one score property.
Now she's skipping ahead.
Okay, well, we'll table Pink then for a minute.
You can. You absolutely can have more than one score. You can have scores on companies. You can have scores on deals. Remember, it's just a calculation property. We're smarter than HubSpot. We get to tell it what to do, right? With that being said, some folks use it for brand new sales versus cross-sell opportunities, or this score is indicating someone's interested in this service offering versus this one. So absolutely. Gold star for Pink. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, they keep coming in. We have one more, two more.
Now you guys are jumping ahead though. So
well, you totally have the right to say that's coming up here. We have one that says, I think you discussed this a little already. What's the best way to update lead scores when they're going to impact workflow, pushing to systems? I think that's where you said you have to manually go see.
Yeah, you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. You have to go to this magic used in column and see what the score is doing what to other things. Now, I know I built some workflows to show you in just a second. When someone hits a certain number of points, their lifecycle stage is updated. When someone hits points, I'm reporting on average score per lifecycle stage, average score per deal stage, right? So unfortunately, you can indeed update your score. You can be Wild West and just update your score, but all this stuff will be affected. So you definitely don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. You want to take a peek and say, is it a big deal if the report changes? Maybe not. Is it a big deal if I say, send an email to someone that gets 20 points and suddenly half my database gets 20 points? Yeah, that's probably a bigger deal.
All right. Since lead scoring is updated every time you make updates, how often do you reevaluate this, like say in a year?
Quarterly, biannually. You'll get better at this. However, life keeps us on our toes. So you may also find seasonally when people's budgets are approved. Are they coming to shop with us, right? When there's mergers, acquisitions, layoffs, new hires, right? So although we'll continue to get better at it over time, things sometimes can change. So certainly at regular intervals, whatever that means for you, but also when there are big honking changes that we need to pay attention to also.
All right, Chris says, if we have Chrome, can we tie events from the Chrome app or Amplitude or Rudder TAC to the scoring?
I don't know.
That's very specific.
Yes, I'm going to find out though now.
All right, Chris, we'll find out for you. All right, Katie offered a suggestion to somebody. Thank you there. Thank you. All right, I think we're all caught up. Blaze ahead before more questions come up.
Okay. We talked about You change the score, things happen. Well, we obviously don't want that to happen on accident, but maybe we can be very strategic with it. And I mentioned this earlier, nothing is written in stone. We just have to be thoughtful, right? So typically, when a certain threshold of points is hit, things happen. Is it progressing the life cycle stage? Is it pushing them to Salesforce? Are we alerting a sales team member? What happens, right? So this is where we can start creating those workflows that you already got a peek at, right? So I can just visit here and go to my workflow. Within our workflows, we can progress a stage. There are a couple little things we just want to pay attention to, right? So I made it up and I said, if someone gets between 11 and 20 points, I want them to move from lead to MQL. Now, as you fellow HubSpot users know, HubSpot does not like it when the lead stage goes backward, right? According to HubSpot, if you're an opportunity and the opportunity is lost, it doesn't like going back to lead. Now, as Nick and Amy can attest, we can force it, but best practice says we forge ahead. Once an opportunity, always an opportunity, for example. So within this workflow, this is contact-based, right? Because score is a contact field in this example. My trigger will be, I want to make sure I'm only taking the leads and moving them to MQL. I don't want to take an SQL and move it backwards. So this is just covering my butt to make sure we're going the right direction. So I said, I want lifecycle stage is any of lead and score. And you'll notice with this dropdown, you can specify. I can say anyone over 50 is a SQL, period. But I wanted to add the and criteria. So I said is less than, I want to say more than, greater than or equal to 11. And same field, score is less than or equal to 20. Saving. The next step is, hey, I set a lifecycle stage to marketing qualified lead. I could also say, oh, let's give somebody a task, right? I could add them to a static list. I can send them to another workflow, right? Which I made up, these lucky fake contexts, right? When I turn this bad boy on, I have no idea how many people will be in it, right? Because it'll be between 11 and 20 points. Ooh, look at that. 112 people qualify for MQL. Now, if it was 100% of 112 people, man, we'd be in business. We know that some of these folks are still not going to be really qualified, right? Your sales team will tell you. Poor marketing folks, right? If I go ahead and enroll these guys and I turn on, take a few minutes, but those folks that earned a certain number of points will move to MQL. Similarly, I could take the same approach to moving folks to SQL. Now remember, sometimes certain forms, certain behaviors are going to push them right to the front of the line. We're not going to make them wait. So it absolutely is feasible that someone is a lead, but sales is calling them, right? But for our exercise, we're making it up and they're moving step by step. This workflow, nearly identical. We said 21 points and up is an SQL. And again, 21 is arbitrary. It can say 5 if you're giving everybody 1 point, it can be 5. If you're giving everybody 100 points, this can say 300. Remember, I only want folks less than SQL to move. Less than, smaller than, behind. MQLs and leads that have a score greater than or equal to 21 will move to SQL. That's the rules I'm making right now. So I'm setting my property value. And if you guys haven't done that step in a workflow, if I add plus, and this is brand new, some of you folks may not even have this view. I do. I don't love it. Under the CRM portion, I can head down to the bottom and set the property value. So that's how I figured out this step right here, right? And then, of course, I can create a task. Jen, by the way, you're going to get a task. Just don't turn your ringer off because your phone's about to beep, right? So if I now turn this workflow on, we might see how many SQLs do we have? Is it our lucky day? Between workflows and lists, HubSpot just works so hard. All right, 28. Cha-cha-cha. Okay. So we now, if I head back over to my contacts dashboard, let's take a look at what these guys are looking like, right? So now we gave some people some points. We used a workflow to update their lifecycle stage. We can now see that my fake people have some points. That took a while. And their lifecycle stage has been updated. And I can see why. Right industry, right state, right job title. I can also see some folks are negative. Ooh, interns. Ooh, right? Of course, some folks, we talked about this, have 0 points, but there's still an opportunity because they have a deal associated with them, right? So don't ever feel like points are end all be all. It's meant to be a tool to help you. Okay. What questions do we have?
Shockingly, none so far. I think
I
they
did
all
great that
got
section.
excited when you
Okay.
did the demo there.
I'm going to keep going before someone jumps in. We talked about this a moment ago because Jen stole my thunder, but let's create a report. So number one, we talked about what are sales and service saying? When we're evaluating if our points make any dang sense at all, is our team saying that they're getting a bunch of unqualified people? Or are they saying, hey, by the time you give me somebody, they've already gone with a competitor? Well, that's important to know. We have to find that sweet spot. One of the ways that's not anecdotal that we can find that out is creating a report to look at the average score per life cycle stage and the average score per closed deal. It can be close won, close lost across stages, right? Again, not an end all be all, but it'll at least give us a starting point. Some of you may also see this drop down looks different nowadays, but I'm going to go to reports. So reporting in the black menu along the top, and I'm going to pick reports. And I already created it just to test it, but we'll start from scratch, right? So first things first, let's look at per life cycle stage. I'm going to create a report and I'm going to make one from scratch because we're smart. Okay. Single object because life cycle stage is a contact property. Score is a contact property. Just looking at contacts right now. One day. Okay. First things first, we always want to look at our filters, right? So I want to know this data was populated in 2020. So I'm going to say all time, right? We always need a create, close, transition date, something. So here's all my contacts. I know I also want to add an additional contact property. I'm here under the data tab. Well, I want to look at lifecycle stage. Cool. What else do I want to look at? Score. All right. When I head over to visualization, this is where I can start mixing and matching. Now, I'm a vertical bar chart girl myself. You, of course, can be horizontal. I want to look at life cycle stage for my x-axis, and I want to look at score for my y. Now, that's showing me the total. If someone has 4,000 points, regardless of your point scale, that would be a lot. Instead, once again, if it's blue, just click it, see what it does. In this case, I'm going to click total, and instead I want to select average. So I can see, all right, my leads have an average 4.87 points. Okay, that makes sense. Opportunities don't have a lot of points. Maybe, but my sales qualified does. Maybe I need to drop this. Maybe instead of waiting until 21 points to push a SQL, maybe 10 is more appropriate, right? Again, this is not from the horse's mouth when you're talking to your team, but this at least can give us insight into what's cooking here. If I get out of this bad boy, because we're going to build another one. Now we're going to look at deal stage compared to score, and we're going to splice them together. I'm still creating a new report, but this time I want a custom report builder because I'm taking HubSpot score, which is contact, and deal stage, which is deal. So I'm going to smoosh some objects together. Okay. My primary data source will be contacts. Great. My other one I want to pick is deals. I'm not even going to scroll. That's just overwhelming. Let's go to next. And we can see here we have 2 data sources to pick from, right? So what do we want to pick? Deal stage. Because similarly, just like we looked at life cycle stage on our x-axis, let's grab, oh boy, all the way at the bottom. Deal stage, put that on our x-axis. Okay. I also want to look at score. Now I can type it in the search bar. I could also scroll through. I can select what source I'm looking at. I'll grab my HubSpot score for my y-axis. Same thing. You'll notice that says sum. Let's go ahead and click our pencil. The aggregation I want, average, right? And I'll apply that. Now, something to remember with custom reports, it also has filters. You'll notice it's not over here. Instead, tricky, it's over here in this tab next to configure. So I want to go ahead and check this. Now you'll notice no value. Well, that's because HubSpot's saying, hey, these contacts that don't have a deal, we got to stick them somewhere. So we can get rid of that if we click deal stage and we say is known, and we'll apply that filter. So now we're only looking at the score of folks that have a deal. Ooh, close lost has a lot of points. Right? This is demo, so this is fake. But you could see how this could potentially be helpful to say, how are folks being nurtured throughout? Are they being handed off at the right time? Are they too early, too late? Right? What questions do you guys have?
So Julia and then Amy chimed in, our friend Amy, that she liked the answer as well. How does lead scoring work when your primary marketing strategy is not inbound? It's mostly demo leads and the main strategy is ABM.
So similar to those attributes, right? And we're going to get out of here. The example we looked at earlier, based on our matrix, just, for those playing along at home, our homework, our matrix, right? If we go ahead and look at that score property, you'll notice, and Amy, we're going to work on this when we implement, right, your score. If I head on back to settings, and I'm going to go on down to properties, in addition to marketing email attributes, there's a whole bunch of buttons we can check out. We'll go ahead when we add a new criteria, right? So we have ad interactions. We didn't even get to that example. We have some of these marketing emails. Activity is really going to be money for you guys. Of course, activity, vocabulary is tricky. Activity is anything you do to a contact. Calling, booking a meeting, right? Booking a task, logging a phone call. Engagement is what the contact does to you. So are they opening your emails? Are they clicking your forms? Are they looking at your web pages? And then, of course, modified, Amy, you just heard this last week, is when we change something on the HubSpot contact, any record, forgive me, phone number, updated a name, added a job title, any of those things. So those three action verbs are not the same thing. Again, because I've learned the hard way, right? So we can indeed say, hey, people get points if the call outcome is any of connected. This method relies very heavily on your team. If they're not logging their calls, if they're writing it down, if they're keeping it in an Excel or in their brain, this will indeed be tricky. Okay. But this is where really getting that buy-in of, hey guys, we're going to evaluate this every X amount of months. And I really need your help. I really want to get these guys qualified and in your hands. I don't want to put disqualified, or I want to know I'm chasing this account, nothing doing, let's course correct. So there's a lot of different options that I encourage you all. Of course, some of them are hidden in different places. Click around, right? Even if your example, everybody gets just 1 point, right? To not totally affect all your other assets. But absolutely take a peek in here because there are a ton of options with every single radio button. And you may find, oh, cool, I didn't know I could measure against that.
All right. Just as a quick time check, it's 12:53. I do technically have the room booked until 15, so we can go a little bit over as well.
Okay. We already talked about this because someone was way ahead of me. You can indeed set score properties on different objects. So Jen and I had an encounter with a gentleman that was able to score his deals. He did do free trials. So he was able to say, all right, free trial is nada. It created a deal via API. But if someone then took an additional step, that was indicating they were a genuine person that they should follow up with, right? So that was a unique use case, but you can indeed set scores on companies, on deals. You can also set secondary or tertiary, I don't know how many scores you need, but also on contacts, right? And then, of course, we talked about those high value forms, setting that life cycle stage. And for those of you, I'm sure you all have done this a million times, but marketing lead capture forms, we don't want to make people wait if they submit the form that says, here's my bank account number. They get to skip to the head of the line, right? So an easy way to do that in our form options, regardless of what we're asking, right? In our options, we want to be able to set that life cycle stage. And you'll notice it's a drop down. Now, if it's a generic contact us, lead, right? Might be the spam bot that's trying to sell me SEO services. But if it's a requesting a demo, you're so cool, I want to meet you, whatever, that could very well indicate they need to be pushed to the front of the line, regardless of points, right? Okay. Any other questions on lead scoring? Because otherwise we're going to get into some automagic and talk about managing marketing contact status, because that can run you.
No questions. I think everybody wants to save some money though.
Okay. For those that have not had the pleasure of finding out the difficult way, and this does not apply to grandfathered portals. So if you've been HubSpotting for a long, long time, you may just be paying outright for contacts, period. Newer accounts or potentially folks that have renewed recently and opted for the marketing contact version, you are paying for just the contacts you want to email. Marketing contacts, right? You can have 10,000 contacts in your database, but you're paying to email 2,000. That's the standard amount for all pro hubs, right? You can pay for additional ones, but surprise, surprise, if you send an email to 2001 contacts, you are now the proud owner of 5,000 additional marketing contacts at about $225 a month, okay? So we want to be thoughtful about not allotting marketing contact status to folks that don't need it, right? You can assign marketing contact status anytime, rain, shine, day, night, but you can only take it away on the first of every month, which is exactly the day that HubSpot assesses overages and will bill you. So this is very easy. We create a bad list. You can call it whatever you want. I've called it bad list for a long time and it's stuck. We create a workflow. Ha cha cha, we're done. So let's check this out. We're going to head on out. Now, you do not have to create a list. I find that creating a list most folks like, because then they can put their eyes on how many bad contacts they have, right? Now, a bad contact can mean a few different things based on your company, your process, your GDPR settings. But I find that there are some standards across the board. And I've started building my bad list, right? It has to be active because we want folks being enrolled constantly. We don't want to have to go check. Some of the standard filters to identify somebody you don't want to pay to email are folks with invalid email addresses. I don't want to pay to email someone I can't email. Additionally, if hard bounce reason is known, you can change this to say is folks that are an unknown user, meaning their email address is bunk now, right? You can also add marketing emails bounced is known or is greater than or equal to 2, or whatever your criteria could be. And there are some other criteria too, right? If we add a filter group, now please notice we're using or. If we click the and, you're going to get a tiny, tiny list because not a lot of people are going to be unsubscribed and bounced and invalid, right? We're saying anyone that meets any of these criteria, I don't want to pay for. So you'll notice I'm filtering on contact because that's who you send emails to, is contacts, not companies. I want to grab contact properties. Another common attribute that I don't want to pay for is unsubscribed from all email. Now, here's the thing. Folks say, well, why can't I just delete them? Well, should you delete these folks? Number one, if your sales, service, account management, any other team are relying on the historical data or are very happily having phone calls or sending emails from their Outlook or from their Gmail, you just deleted the whole record. Ugh. Number two, if it's someone that maybe submitted a form, not so hot, well, guess what? You delete them, they submit another form, they're back in. So then you're doing this rigmarole over again, right? So I like marking them as non-marketing and they can live there all they want. So I'm going to grab unsubscribe from email is true. I don't want to pay to email them. They won't even get it. Additionally, a very common one, also under contact property still, is gathering the folks that are unengaged. HubSpot defines unengaged as a contact that has not opened the last 11 marketing emails. Marketing meaning one-to-many, newsletters, promos, content download confirmation emails. That is not counting the one-to-one sales emails, okay? So in this case, I want to look at marketing email. Where are you? Marketing emails delivered is greater than or equal to 11 because I know that somehow HubSpot came up with that number. This time I do want to grab the and. I want folks that have been sent 11 emails and didn't open them. So I'm still going to go back to contact properties. And this time I'm looking at marketing email, opened. Now you'll notice, little warning, Apple iOS, it's not an exact science, but we're going to grab it anyways. We're going to say is equal to 0. Okay. When I save this list, we know how HubSpot is saving lists. It takes a while. It's processing, but I'm going to see these folks that can't get my email. So why on earth do I want to pay to email them? That's step 1. Step 2, I'll head on over to my workflows, one of my favorite places. And what I'm going to do is grab the workflow I already made. So I, as you can see, label my workflows long and very descriptively because otherwise I lose them. So let's head on into this contact-based workflow, right? Because again, a contact is the person that's unengaged. And I can set up triggers identical to the ones I just made. You don't need a list. However, like I said, sometimes folks like being able to see, I have a database of 10,000. Why are 5,000 bad? Ugh, right? So sometimes having that number at your disposal can be helpful. In this instance, the trigger I'm going to grab is list membership. What am I grabbing? Bad list. I want anyone that's a member of the bad list. Easy peasy. All I'm going to do is add a step. And I don't know where it is, so I use the search bar. And what I do, where is it? Oh, I'm in the demo portal. You guys will have an additional option because my portal is not real. There will be an additional option that says remove marketing status. Okay. I'm going to pretend that this is it. Don't actually delete your contact. You will have an option that says remove marketing status. You can put it right there. And it'll have a little note that says something to the extent of this will happen on the 1st of the month or at the next update date. When you were to review and publish this, and I won't actually publish it because then all my demo context will be gone, it will indicate the same number of folks that are on your bad list. And this will happen every single month on the 1st of the month. You do not have to remember to do it. We're not deleting folks. We're simply taking away their marketing contact status so you do not have to pay for them. Okay. What questions do you guys have for that?
There are a couple questions, but I know in like 2 slides you have what questions do you have. So let's keep going forward because we're a little bit over here.
Okay. We already built. I kept skipping all my fun GIFs, depending on where you are in the world. Jen?
Yes. Okay. So Emma has questions on the next slide. But as a heads up, our agency does do a lot of in-depth portal audits. Lead scoring is a huge component of that. But we are going to be raising the prices of those January 1st. So if you're interested in getting Emma to do a one-on-one deep dive of your portal with a consultation call, I did want to let you know that you could book those this month. We can complete them after all the holiday craziness and stuff, just so you guys didn't get hit with a price increase next year in case that was something you were interested in.
Okay. Ben, you have a question. Let me go back and show you. Jen mentioned that we will send out this recording, but the typical things that make someone bad, and of course, that's just my phrase for it, invalid email address. Email bounce reason is known or any of, you can select certain ones. Marketing emails bounced is known or a certain amount. Folks that have unsubscribed from all emails, not to be confused with folks that have maybe unsubscribed from individual subscription types, but someone that says they don't want to hear from you at all. And then, of course, unengaged. And we know they're unengaged because we sent 11 emails. They didn't open any. Excellent.
All right. A couple more questions. Josh wants to know, when would you actually delete somebody versus just marking them non-marketing?
That is totally up to you. My personal practice is never.
I like to delete people who are clearly spam. I'm talking like asdf@hotmail.com and their name is No Way Jose or something.
Yeah, I just find that some of those are tricky and they just keep ending up back in your system.
All right. I think there was one more. This is pretty specific, but Chris wants to know, can HubSpot integrate with Iterable, their current email tool?
Iterable. I don't know. Chris keeps asking. Is this the same Chris that asked me a question I didn't know earlier?
I don't know. She's going to go to the app market.
Now there's two. Iterable. So this is the app marketplace. This is my go-to for does it smoosh automatically. It doesn't look like natively. Now, this is a whole nother topic, but HubSpot under integrations, private apps, you can create, and a private app is just creating the API key. So this could be where you create that API token and say, here, iterable person, and then you're able to connect the two and talk. So that might be an option since it doesn't look like it's a native app.
All right. Brooke is saying she deletes spam and test messages.
I believe her.
And Katie says if Elon Musk downloads your form, that's clearly spam. You can delete it.
We do get a lot of Elons. Yeah. We have South African representatives here today.
True. All right. Can you go back to that last slide here? We'll ask for final questions so we can wrap up. As a reminder, we do run these hugs quarterly. The next one is already booked for March 19th. Same time, same platform. We're going to have a rep from HubSpot, who's kind of an internal AI guru there, go over some of their coolest tools that B2B tech companies specifically might be interested in. Honestly, the agenda is not even set yet because they're bringing out new AI tools every month, it sounds like. So we will be reviewing the latest and greatest in March. Lots to come here.
Speak now. Hold your peace.
And I just realized my video's been off the whole time I'm talking. All right. Lots of kudos for you, Emma. Any last questions? We'll stay on for a few more minutes, or if you want to jump, that's totally fine too.
I'm hearting everybody. Thank you all for joining. Thank you very much.